to just completely shatter Arne Slot's zonal marking system. You really couldn't write it, could you?
It is what dreams are made of.
And the week that he was named in the England squad as well. I mean, what a week the guys had.
Newcastle United made history on Sunday with a 2-1 victory over Liverpool FC in the Carabao Cup final, 70 long years after the Geordies last won a major domestic trophy at an emotionally charged Wembley. No sign this morning in the office of Sun Sports head of sport, Sean Custis, but fortunately his deputy, Sun Sports tactical guru Dean Scoggins, managed to make his way in to London Bridge. Dino, great to see you again. A wonderful occasion for the Geordies up and down the country, particularly those ones at Wembley. And as always, you've got 5 points from that game, tactical teasers that fans may or may not have noticed.
Yeah, 5 points for us, but I dare say they had few more than 5 pints. I'm really, really, really happy for those Geordie boys, and for the football fans who haven't celebrated a trophy in their time supporting their team. This is the inspiration for that, isn't it? Fantastic stuff, and a tactical masterclass, which is what we're here for, okay? So number one is Burn Baby Burn, how they smashed and set alight to that Liverpool zonal marking system. That was great. Number two is Isak leaving VVD, Virgil van Dijk in a spin for that second goal. Number three is the magic number, the genius in the Newcastle midfield and how hard they worked. And number four, away the lads. We told you that this was going to happen, how Newcastle was going to set up in our preview show, and we'll just show how they broke Liverpool's playing out system. And then added on to that, number five, slow-mo. How do you stop Salah? Newcastle did it.
Dino, Dan Burn was absolutely phenomenal. Local lad, Blythe born, I believe. And it was just one of those real remarkable, touching, emotional stories, wasn't it? The local lad come good, scoring in a cup final. It is what dreams are made of.
And the week that he was named in the England squad as well. I mean, what a week the guys had. And yeah, the dream scenario for everyone involved, you know, didn't quite make it early on, fought his way back, worked in Asda pushing trolleys for a bit, and then has made his way to be a goal scorer for his hometown club in a cup final. Like, you really couldn't write it, could you? Absolutely fantastic. And they used him perfectly to just completely shatter Arne Slot's zonal marking system. And Arne Slot tried to explain it afterwards and talked about his zonal marking system, how he leaves 5 players across in front of the 6-yard box and in front of the goalkeeper. They're his big headers. And then he sends other players out to mark. And one of those is 5'0" Alexis McAllister. So Newcastle said, OK, we'll put Fabian Schär, we'll put Joe Linton, and we'll put Big Dan Burn in those outward positions. We'll hit these clipped flat corners and we'll let them head it. And look, it was a phenomenal header for the goal, but the setup is not just about him scoring from the goal. It's one of those three heading it back into the place in front of the goalkeeper. We saw it last week with the Fulham Manchester United goal. People then run across. Bruno Guimaraes had a good chance when one was headed down. And Liverpool had warning. Look, if this is your plan before the game, change it when you see that Newcastle are doing something about it. There was 2 set pieces and 1 corner where this was happening. I was getting messages from mates. It was mentioned on commentary. Everyone's going, why is McAllister marking Dan Burn? And then there you go, goal, brilliant header. Great celebration as well. But look, Liverpool have got that wrong. Eddie Howe has got it spot on. And then the delivery from Kieran Trippier and the likes has worked perfectly. So fair play, 1-0.
So what do you make of what Arne Slot had to say then, right? Normally a player like Burn runs to the zone because normally, and although he's an exception, I've never in my life seen a player from that far away heading a ball with so much force into the far corner. First of all, phenomenal header.
Yeah.
What Arne Slot's saying there is that he expects Dan Burn to be in the mixer with those 5 elite level headers of the ball that Arne Slot's talking about that he lines up on the edge. Eddie Howe, interestingly, also said afterwards that they've been practicing for 2 weeks set plays with this game in mind, and he joked that Dan Burn will be the first to admit he has not been practicing them that well, suggesting that it wasn't going as well as he'd liked. But do you think it's sort of something Liverpool picked up on and they've held them back on purpose?
No, they defend like this a lot, Liverpool. This is their setup. And it's fantastic from Eddie Howe and Jason Tindall and the set-piece coach, because what they've done is they've taken Liverpool's two best headers of the ball, Konate and Van Dijk, out of the picture because they're not going to be competing for the ball. So Liverpool aren't a very big team anyway. So I know Kwanzaa was playing yesterday instead of Trent Alexander-Arnold, but then you've got your Robertson. Jota's good in the air, but is not greatly big. And then you've got McAllister's not massive. Szoboszlai's okay, but they're not all round as big a team as Newcastle. So if then Newcastle's plan is to just nullify the two best attacking headers of the ball in Konate and Van Dijk, they can't attack it because they're staying in their zone. There's this square in front of them that is Newcastle's territory in Liverpool's penalty area. And it's just all wrong. And they've got, and look, Eddie Howe's being modest and saying they didn't do it that well in practice. But as I said, it's not just about the chance for Burn to score, it's also for the knockdowns. So you win the first header and then you've got a chance of scoring from the follow-up. Yeah,
but just to break it down then, Newcastle leaving the players on the edge of the box, that you think is a deliberate thing, first of all?
Absolutely, yes.
So just don't get involved where they're good headers.
That means you're not drawing Konate and Van Dijk out. Stay out of that position.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm doing Dan Burn or Newcastle a disservice here by suggesting that their set-play setup wasn't designed for Dan Burn to score.
One of those is the option. Cher, Joe Linton and Burn are all options to score, as he did.
But more likely,
it's let's create chaos by having those three at the back. And you'll see it a lot for teams who, if you get that set piece, that free kick on the corner of an area, and you think there's no real angle here to score. So they put it to the back post and then they head it back across goal to create the second run panic. And that's what they do. It just worked brilliantly. And look, it's a bonus that the guy scored, but it was his script, wasn't it, Dan Burn on the day?
Yeah, absolutely. It really was touching, wasn't it? It's one of those things you don't sort of see as many of those in football.
No, you don't often feel emotional as somebody who's not invested in either team, but that is the moment to savour.
Absolutely, mate, absolutely. Just as well, Dan Burn, an absolute colossus, just aside from the set pieces on the day.
Oh yeah, did his own job as well, and won it. He was just phenomenal in both boxes. Yeah.
Listen, Dino, on Tactics Exposed Team Talk, in the build-up to the game, you can go and watch that episode, of course, if you fancy it, to see how right Dino was on a lot of these things. One of the issues that we spoke about, Dino, for Liverpool was how to stop Alexander Isak and how that battle with Virgil van Dijk was going to be a real key one for how the game went. You were spot on there. And we actually saw, particularly with his goal, excellent finish, by the way, a little bit of what you were talking about, although a little bit further up the pitch than I think you were expecting.
Yeah, it did happen in open play a couple of times. And actually what we're talking about here is that Isak goes and then he stops and then he goes again. So go, stop, go. And that means a lot of the time he goes, which means a defender pushes into an area, then he stops to get the ball and then he runs again. And if he doesn't get the ball, he's created that space for him on that second run. And, of course, he's onside. So that happened a couple of times in the game and he was getting really frustrated, especially with Trippier, for not passing the ball into his feet. He was clapping his hands and saying, I'm there, I've done my little tactic, I'm there for it. But then on the goal, it was, look, I know it's not fashionable and it's almost against the law to criticise Virgil van Dijk, who is, by all accounts, if you read everything in every paper, every website, the greatest defender in the history of football.
He's not bad, to be fair.
Yeah, but look, he is great. He's a great player, but it was his mistake and he got caught under the ball and we can see from the picture, he knew. He knew it. He knew it was his mistake, head in hands as Isak was celebrating.
Just describe why.
So what happens is the cross comes over from the left and the ball goes over both of their heads, right? Nothing wrong in either of them there, other than the fact Van Dijk turns and then he's looking at the next ball, which goes over his head to Robertson, and then I think it's Murphy at the back post. And while that's happening and Van Dijk turns, Isak does his little move where he goes to go towards the ball, stops, comes away, and only he creates himself 3 or 4 yards of space. Of course, a striker's instinct, the ball gets headed down to him, sweeps it in the net. And what Van Dijk should be doing is thinking when the ball gets knocked down, I've got to win it or block it. And it only takes 2 or 3 yards against someone as class as Isak to score from there. Van Dijk mistake, but brilliant, brilliant movement. And Murphy as well, fair play. for heading it into an area where he knew Isak was going to create himself some space.
Yeah, he did really well to get to that ball first, didn't he? Just quickly then, you're saying it's a Virgil van Dijk mistake, because before we come, I said to you that it seems really harsh to expect Van Dijk in what's a quick move, and you're not going to expect him to get the first ball when it goes over his head, fine. So to expect him in a split second to turn, judge where the ball's going, where it's likely to come, and be able to follow his man at the same time, and you said, but it's positionally, his body position was wrong.
Body position is wrong. Body position is wrong. If we're thinking that you're perhaps Isak, the goal's here, you're perhaps Isak, and the ball's coming over your head there, he gets himself in a position where Isak can almost see his number, and we say that a lot. You know, if an attacker can see a defender's number, he's in the wrong position. So he's gone that way. Really, he should be there in that position, so that when Isak drops in front of him, then he can go and close the ball down and at very worst block the shot. Yeah. But he was just not in the position to either clear. At least put him, absolutely. And also, I think it was Konate actually is in a really good body position, and he almost gets there before Van Dijk does. So it just wasn't very good. But let's give credit to the assist and Isak for his genius bit of movement.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, 3 is a magic number. Dino, Joe Linton, Sandro Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes. Absolutely superb performance from that Newcastle trio in midfield. Joe Linton in particular.
The man that Steve Bruce bought as a number 9, by the way. And Big Joe, as he called him. But just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Like, if you can show other teams who get annoyed at their players for not putting enough effort in. I said to one of my Spurs pals last night, I really wish some of the Tottenham players would show as much desire as those 3 and show how much it meant to them. That's
what it was, wasn't it?
It was just, and positionally brilliant, right? We'll come on to that in a sec. But first and foremost, they were the epitome of the Geordie, the Geordie nation, the Toon Army. Everything and effort came through them. And, this guy was blocking it in both boxes. He was everywhere in midfield. The 3 of them, the blocks, the dual successes, the headers, the tackles. And what I loved about it the most is they worked as a 3. So what happened is when they're out of possession, nominally Tonali goes, and it was actually in previous matches was Bruno who did this, but a lot more yesterday and in the final at Wembley was Tonali going to press. He's the one who breaks out of the 3 to go and join Isak in the press. And then the other 2 are ready to pounce. Yep. Because if Tonali and Isak's press is good and it gets passed into midfield, we're going to win it. So that only happens when Liverpool have got the ball on the halfway line. Other than that, they pretty much retreat into their shape. And then they go man v man in midfield. And if you think, if you're McAllister, Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones came on in that position, but if you're in those central positions, Gravenberch finds himself a little bit deeper, so he's not really in there against that 3. Yeah. You're looking around in that midfield thinking, as soon as I receive the ball here, I'm going to get smashed. I'm going to get smashed by one of these 3. Yeah. And it created that sort of sense in the Liverpool midfield that they had no control. Yeah. And the 3 of them were amazing. They carried the ball when they needed to carry. There was my favourite part of the entire game was when all 3 of them were involved. McAllister cut inside and he actually sort of gets away from Bruno, but Bruno gets a foot in. Yep. It bounces to the side. Joe Linton then hits McAllister. The ball bobbles out and Tonali picks it up and runs away with it. And look, three against 1, and it felt like 3 against 1 all over the place. So fair play to them, and also understanding when 1 goes and 2 stay. And that's so important in a midfield game, especially against a team like Liverpool.
And I think that is one of those sort of unseen things in football these days, isn't it? Where tactics is one thing, but to implement them properly, lots of these systems require unheard of levels of effort and just output, and the numbers that the Newcastle.
You can tell the player to be in the right place, but you can't tell him to go and put that effort in.
Exactly right, Dino. Howe, the lads, Eddie Howe, maestro performance from him from a tactical perspective. I think he'd only beaten Liverpool once before in his managerial career. That was when he was at Bournemouth. So that is a sort of duck off his back, if you like. He was really emotional after the game, and he admitted that was quite out of character for him. He said he's going to put the coaching books away just for a couple of days to enjoy this success. How he deserves it, and just tell us how he'd done it tactically.
Well, yeah, it's a bit of a blueprint for others to follow in playing against Liverpool, I think. And, top of the Premier League, Liverpool, romping away with the Premier League title. PSG did a similar thing to them, in the Champions League to knock them out. And, this was a real let's split Liverpool, okay? So, again, I spoke about it in the preview show. If you missed it, and if you want to go back and see that we got it spot on, then that'd be lovely. But what he does is he presses with 4 or 5, and the most important thing there is the 5th player has to make a good decision, because if he goes and there's too many of them that's gone in the press, you're outnumbered elsewhere in midfield and in front of the back 4. But if you go with 4 or 5, that includes Isak, that includes the wingers, and that includes at least one of the midfield players. As I said, normally it was Tonali yesterday at the weekend, and then you have 5 at the back. And then you have your midfield with your 4 defenders and then your midfielders in front, okay? So you move up and down the field like that. And what that creates is a huge pitch. So what we talk about in the coaching manual is make the pitch small when you're defending, because then you can get around, and make the pitch big when you're attacking. But what Newcastle do is throw that out the window and go, we're going to make it massive so that then we're going to press well and we're going to force the goalkeeper or one of the defenders to go long. Yeah. And then when they go long, we know we're going to win those duels, because we've got Burn, we've got Cher, we've got Joe Linton, and we've got Bruno in front. So it makes it very, very difficult for teams to get out.
And there were lots of Liverpool fans since saying, I haven't seen us go that direct for an awfully long time.
Yeah, and that was because Newcastle were making them do it, okay? So there's 2 things to look at. The second will come on with Salah in a minute. But the first one is that they are so committed to the plan. And again, another thing we talk about all the time, you can tell a team how to play and you can talk about tactics, but if the players don't trust it and don't commit to it, it's not going to work. So they go man for man. And effectively what they make is Kelleher, the goalkeeper, with no passing options. Yep. And then because Isak's press is so intelligent, if he's gone to press a defender that way, he then arcs his run so that then Kelleher can't pass it to that defender that he leaves, and therefore he's got to smack it up the middle. And then, as I say, Dan Burn and Cher against Jota and Salah, and it's just not a contest. And then the 2 midfield players who haven't pressed buzzing around to win it back, and it was just brilliant. And they created chaos in midfield. And as we said before, those 3 win all those battles.
I don't want to take anything away from Newcastle, Dean, but there are people, quite understandably, suggesting that Liverpool's exertions against PSG into extra time, penalties in the Champions League in the week, compared to Newcastle's, well, basically it was a walk in the park at West Ham on Monday night, the extra bit of rest. Do you think that played into it at all? Because Liverpool looked off it from the off.
Yeah, they did, but I just felt like Newcastle wanted it more. And that's understandable, because Liverpool, with all due respect to the Carabao Cup, Liverpool have played bigger games than this, and this is Newcastle's biggest ever. So, yeah, there is that element. But what I was disappointed at from a Liverpool perspective is it took them really until Curtis Jones came on the field as a second-half substitute to actually work out how to play around this press. And Jones basically created the chance for himself, which he got on the end of Pope's only real great save in the game, where it was Jones who came and was very brave under pressure. So when we talked about that Isak press on the goalkeeper, Jones came to feet, received it off Kelleher, and then Isak has left Van Dijk. So Joe Jones just pops it off straight to Van Dijk. Liverpool are on the attack. Van Dijk carried it 30 or 40 yards upfield. Jones got on the end of the cross. So that's how it's done. And they only did it once then. And then I think it took until the 87th minute before they did it again. So, yeah,
so
Newcastle,
you're not having
excellent.
the Liverpool attire.
No, I just don't think they didn't work out the set pieces quick enough, and they didn't work out how to beat that press well enough.
Yep, fair enough. It ultimately was a sort of set pieces that decided it, was it not? Was. Right, Dino, slow-mo. We talked about Mo Salah in the build-up on the Team Talk show last week. Mo Salah, this is now 8 Wembley games that he's had. He's only scored in 1 of them. Yet another big occasion at the home of English football that has passed Mo Salah by, and he really was a shadow of his usual self. But was that an off day for Salah, or more to the point, an excellent day for Tino Livramento, Burn and Harvey Barnes?
I wonder if Mo Salah enjoyed the celebrations and he was still in Livramento's pocket for them. That's like, it's, but I saw something.
Desperate to be liked by the Geordies, desperate.
No, just like, let's give credit where credit's due again. And, I did see something that where he was on the side of all the milk cartons because he went missing at Wembley again, but,
by the way, for any of you watching this on YouTube, the Gen Zs and even the millennials among you, that is a 1980 80s joke.
Fair play. You see the grey hair. It's fair enough. Right, but yeah, how did they do it? Okay, how did they do it?
Yeah.
One touch in the box. You're winning. Keep him out the area. Keep him out of the corner of the area. So he got a lot of touches, sort of down in the corner where he was running after those long balls.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that was the only place he really got it, because he was running after those long balls. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which I found really interesting, and don't worry, I've looked at the data for you, is the 7 or 8 clearances that Liverpool made from the right back position.
Yep.
So first of all, Jarrell Kwanzaa's playing instead of Trent Alexander-Arnold, to use his full name. And then, you know, and Conor Bradley would have been the other option if he'd have been fit as well. But I'm not sure it would have made a difference if either of those two had been playing. You know, obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold would have been more accurate with his balls. But what Newcastle did was Joe Linton working his socks off, I nearly used another phrase then, in front of Livramento pushing up right on Salah to force him to go backwards straight away. And then whoever else it was on the left-hand side, Harvey Barnes at the start, and then after the substitutions as well, getting in front. So they created sort of this wall, this black and white wall in front of Salah, which when Liverpool play out, they often play into his feet. And we talk about it with Arsenal, we talk with Saka, we talk about it with Liverpool before, where he wants to take the ball on the run. Okay, yeah. So pass him the ball, he comes off the line and takes it on the run. They stopped that happening, which meant every time he did get the ball, he touched it backwards towards his own halfway line, and then they hit him again. So it wasn't really Salah's fault. You know, Liverpool have got to find a way to isolate their best player against the fullback. And, you know, Livramento is a good one-to-one defender, so he did a good job when that happened. But, you know, if you'd have come away and said Salah's going to have 20 touches in the whole game and he's only going to have 1 in the penalty area, I'll take it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. What a day for the Newcastle defence. Look, Dino, one thing that I just want to touch on that I think often gets lost by us on Tactics Exposed and Tactics Exposed Team Talk, of course, and just generally in discourse around football, particularly tactically. When we do, we break them down into the 5 points and we examine them as standalone tactical plans, right? They don't sound easy, but you make it very easy for people to understand. You go, oh, okay, that makes sense. I understand why they do that. How difficult is it for a team, as Newcastle done on Sunday, to tie all of these things together at once and ensure they're employing them in a 90-minute non-stop game?
It's a really good question. And someone like a coach like Eddie Howe, there's something else that comes into it, okay, the dark arts of it. Because, you know, it frustrates the hell out of fans when you're in a stadium and you're losing to a team like Newcastle, because they just kill the game. And they're not just killing the game to time waste. Obviously, that helps when you're winning. What they're also doing is resetting.
Yeah.
Okay, so the ball goes out of play and then you reset into your shape and then you know your job straight away.
Yeah, cool.
So it's when it gets ragged that it becomes even more difficult, as you say. But, you know, they'll go down, the ball will go out of play, they'll make sure the throw can't be taken quickly. You know, a free kick will happen, they'll talk to a referee so that someone can't take a quick free kick. And meanwhile, everybody's getting back into their shape and then knowing their job. So in that instance with Salah, Livramento will get back into his position, he'll be shouting at Murphy and shouting at Joe Linton, you get in your position. The set-up comes, Liverpool look up, oh, can't pass it to Salah's feet. So then it's all reset. So, yeah, but it's all part of the plan. But as you say, they've got to carry it off in the pressure. And look, it all came together. Trophy lift it is.